Hey, welcome back. I'm Senator Bryce Reeves, guest host of the John Fredericks Show with my sidekick and Chief of Staff, Mark Savage. I'm really pleased to have this guest on the show this morning. He's a personal friend, but also a businessman, an entrepreneur, somebody who day in and day out tries to make a living and keep his employees gainfully employed in this ever-changing COVID world we live in. Steve Gooch, welcome to the John Fredericks Show. How are you doing?
Good morning, Bryce. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm doing as well as can be expected in these times.
Well, listen, I didn't tell him what you do. Steve is a restaurateur after coming from the corporate side of a previous life, I guess, if you want to call it that. And he's become a phenomenal restaurateur. He has two restaurants, The Stables, which is off of Belmont Avenue. And I'm going to tell you, if you go there, order the lamb lollipops. But everything they make there, Evan does a great job. Your partner business partner with regard to that restaurant, he's the main chef, classically trained, just makes some just phenomenal dishes. That's The Stables. And then you also have one of my favorite hangouts, the Franklin Inn. And, what can I say? It's the quintessential Boston town, Beantown corner pub / bar / eatery if you want a local fare. And I say most of the time there, and I don't think they mind me saying that as Dale, one of your managers, says, it's like a carnival. But let's talk a little bit. This last two segments, I've got things totally kind of away from politics. But how has, and I want to talk a little bit about this, politics, especially under COVID, affected you? But more importantly, what are the things that we can do as legislators? I know we talked briefly about, what we're doing with alcohol, but what has been the impact of COVID to you as a business owner, and what do you see going forward this next quarter?
Well, if you look immediately, I really hate to put it this way, but the best thing that the government can do for me is for Congress to do their job. Part of the idea of the setup we have is that you do have two competing parties, and this should lead to compromise, which gets us the best solution for the people. It seems right now we have a Congress which is more interested in showing that they can be tougher in a standoff. In the meantime, real people are losing their jobs, real businesses are closing, real people are seeing their life savings be slowly withered away because Congress can't, compromise.
Right.
And I know there's plenty of folks who feel that, well, we have to stand up for our principles, but it's really hard to stand up for your principles if you're going bankrupt.
Well, so let's talk about the impact to your restaurants. Have you had to have cutbacks? How have you managed? How have you had to raise the price of food? Is there a food scarcity? All the things, I know you're limited on how many patrons you can have, and your takeouts have gone more, but how have you adjusted in the restaurant business? Because that's one of the hardest hit industries under COVID, that and movie theaters, I think, and gyms at some point. How have you adjusted to remain profitable?
Well, we're not profitable. I can tell you right now that there are going to be very, very few restaurants that are actually profitable under this setup. Even though Governor Northam has effectively eliminated seating restrictions in terms of your total percentage or number, what's still in place is no bar seating and tables must be 6 feet apart. If you put that together in a place like the Franklin Inn, a third of my seats are at the bar.
Right.
My tables are right on top of each other. This is an in-city restaurant, and anyone who's familiar with in-city restaurants in Richmond knows these are cramped spaces. So right now, I have gone from a health department and building permit rated capacity of 39 to roughly 12. It's so that's not 50. That's not even 50%. That's not 75%. That's certainly not 100%. When you can seat 12 people, when you got a capacity of 39, it is not possible to make money.
Well, and you look at your price range of the Franklin Inn, and Wednesday night burger night's the best time to come because it's $5, and the burgers you serve are some of the best I've ever had, and fries, and the value there. I think maybe that's a lost leader for you, but 12 people getting it, you're not even going to break even. So I see where you are. So how has So how have you adjusted? How have you adjusted at the stables? I mean, I know your liquor sales at the Franklin Inn has kind of helped steady some of that. How do you see the forecast there?
Well, at the Franklin Inn, first Bryce, you asked about raising prices. When beef prices went skyrocketing, I could no longer do a $5 burger, so it is a $6 burger right now. But you're right. I can't, that depends on high volume, high turnover, and people coming in, ordering a burger, ordering a beer, ordering some other libation with it for it to be profitable. Basically frequent turns of the tables. When you only got 12 seats, that's not going to work.
Right.
The Stables has done better on the takeout side. Franklin Inn, we pretty much saw our takeout business go to zero as soon as they allowed inside seating because it was simply a lot of the same folks.
Right.
The takeout business at the Stables has stayed a bit stronger, but with the same limitations, we've essentially had to take 6 tables out of service. So that greatly, when you got 14 to start, that again is greatly reducing your capacity. And the bar seating there is only about 20%, but we've lost that also. We've adapted by making some of our menu items travel better. Things which we feel pretty comfortable putting in a takeout container and are reheatable at home if people need. Some of the more complex items we love to serve in the restaurant, just don't travel well. So we've adjusted our menu. But, part of the problem is not just the restrictions on seatings and things like that. We have industry data which essentially say that 34% of Americans feel comfortable eating out.
Right.
I don't care what seating I'm allowed. You could give me 100% when 2/3 of my customer base is not comfortable going out to eat. These problems are going to extend well beyond the end of the year.
And so do you think under the current COVID, it's almost like when 9/11 hit and we had heightened security measures that became permanent security measures at our airports. Do you see that change in the restaurant industry and how we get our food and enjoy entertainment going forward? Or do you think we'll slowly get back to normal with some precautions?
Well, I think that's a fantastic analogy because I don't know the exact number, but it was years before flights returned to normal and airline capacity returned to normal.
Right.
And I think you're looking at something similar. One of the fears I have, and it's completely understandable, is some of these changes become permanent. So, for example, if the new code for restaurants is that tables must be 6 feet apart, the Franklin Inn will never be viable.
Right. Right.
So it's, and I expect some of these things.
Well, and that's the charm of that place anyway, is the closeness of the tables and the conversation. I mean, people go there because it's great food and the libations are great, but it really is a great place for conversations, and you see people meet up and stuff, and I think you're right, you'll lose the charm of that place. But so let's talk a little bit about the president's policies. He recently came out and talked about payroll tax. Now, that's got to help you in some aspects if they can get it through quick enough, right?
Well, the payroll tax helps those who are working. I used to employ 25 people. It went down to 4 under the when we went to takeout only. It's now back up to about 11 or 12. So it will definitely help those folks who are working. Those folks who I still have not been able to bring back are not impacted by that, but they're certainly going to be impacted by the additional $300 the federal government is providing, and hopefully the $100 the states are going to provide.
Right. As a small business owner myself, you and I both understand what it takes to put away estimated quarterly taxes. I mean, I've seen your office. You got bank boxes everywhere for fear of, for audits and all these other things and receipts that seemingly fade away after several years that they're there, but you can't, I don't know. How is the PPP process? Did you take advantage of that? Has that helped you at all? And then I'd like to, after you answer that one, what do you think about the riots? And it's very close to the Franklin Inn, right there on Monument. And has that, are people afraid of even coming to that restaurant because of its closeness to some of this stuff? So let's talk PPP, and then let's talk, the riots and looting.
The PPP process worked well for me. It's how I've been able to remain open. I received my funding, if you will, in the second wave,
right?
Which in some ways is almost an advantage because, as you know, I'm a fairly conservative guy fiscally. And so I always make sure I have sufficient cash in the bank to pay my bills, so I was able to weather, the first bit of this.
Sure.
And then PPP came online. But, here's the problem with PPP is it was based on 8 weeks of payroll. And so at this point, it's been a lot longer than 8 weeks since we got our PPP money. That money for many restaurants has run out.
Yep.
And so you're going to see, I think, right now we're seeing, I think, 2 to 3 a week close, and I think that's only going to accelerate. Well, now, our Treasury Secretary has talked about a second wave, and the best thing they could do for us is, let's face it, business conditions are not what they were, so there's no question about it being forgiven. Is just forgive the first wave, and here's a check in an equal amount so you can stay open.
Right. Well, I had a chance to listen to two people. One, Larry Kudlow, who's a chief economic and finance advisor to the president. And, the question came up about $30 trillion in debt. And you're looking at this next stimulus bill, and I talked to Congressman Whitman about that. And, he wasn't sure if they were going to even bring that to the floor before the November elections, yet you are still having to do business. And so, Kutlow's like, look, the crisis right now it's got to be handled, and debt's not a bad thing. And when you think about the economic policies of the president and where he was going with this and where we were pre-COVID, I think, the president was on a track to start getting rid of some of this $30 trillion of debt, and pandemic hits. So I think those guys understand. I think the hardest part is, like you mentioned earlier with Congress, you need the stimulus bill now. You don't need it in November, because November you're not going to be around, right? Or a lot of folks won't be around. We've got to do more as leaders to get us there, to really understand what it is to do business and float money and payroll and order, and all the people used to pay within 90 days are going to 180 days, and I don't know how you do it. I thank you for doing it. You make some phenomenal food and employ some great people, and I thank you for what you're doing. Let's talk just a little bit about some things that we can do in the State House with regard to state taxes. Is there something that we could be doing to help restaurateurs and entrepreneurs like yourself that are in small business immediately before we go into the August 18th session?
I'm going to actually answer a prior question you asked also with this. As a Richmond restaurant owner, I am very impacted by the city. Right now, it's a 12.5% meals tax. Okay, that's a huge disincentive to come into the city when you can go to a restaurant in Short Pump and just simply not pay that type of load.
Right.
On top of that, it's very interesting. As you know, I've moved to the city from the suburbs, and I still have plenty of friends there. And basically what they're all saying is, I'm afraid to go into the city. I am, yes, we were impacted by the riots. I am extremely fortunate in that I suffered no physical damage, and certainly even more fortunate that none of my people got hurt.
Right.
But I absolutely had employees who were afraid to come to work. I shut both restaurants for a few days when there were announced protests, which were going to be within a block of my restaurants. So we shut down preemptively to keep everybody safe. I think the two things you could do, to the degree that you could lessen the state tax burden, that would be fantastic. But most importantly, I need my customers and my employees to feel safe coming to Richmond again.
Well, I couldn't. This is one topic, and I've been harping on it all morning, is that three things: make your life easier, make your life better, and make your life safer. And it's so great to hear that. It's sad that I'm having to hear it from you, but it's so great that as an entrepreneur and a business guy, you know the pulse. You talk to your customers daily that come in and eat, and that's what's foremost on their mind is safety, both in the COVID, so they don't get it, and then these riots and everything else. And you're absolutely right. That 12.5% tax that Stoney put in there and hacked you guys. It's definitely not working now that restaurants are closing and can't keep their payroll. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I often run policies by you when I was chairman of the committee that handled ABC. How has that laxing of some of the regulations helped you with ABC?
During our takeout-only days, that we were granted effectively an on-off license, even though we only had an on license, was wonderful. I put my entire wine list at the Stables at 50% off, and we sold an awful lot of wine. So I think that was a huge help, and would love to see that continue.
Great. Well, we'll do our best. I know we've talked to Travis, and I've had you come down and testify when we were talking about food-beverage ratio, and most people in Virginia think we have bars, but we don't, because every establishment that serves spirits has to have a certain percentage of food versus spirits, and how that all works out. And it's a whole complicated bureaucratic mess, which I've been trying to clean up for 4 years as chairman, and I'm still working on in the subcommittee. But I will pass that along. I think that's something we'll look at, Mark, when we get ready to go back. I don't think we're going to be able to take that up this session, as we're probably going to get limited to 3 bills dealing with just BLM and justice reform and those sort of things. But hey, welcome back to the John Fredericks Show. I'm your guest host, Senator Bryce Reeves, along with Mark Savage, and on the line we have my good friend, restaurateur Steve Gooch, who owns 2 fabulous restaurants here in the city of Richmond. And Steve, we were just kind of commenting and following up on some of the things that we could do at the state level to help you with regard to ABC and some of those challenges. And we covered a lot of ground today. But more importantly, I just want to thank you for coming on the show. And I think it's important that we hear from everyday folks that are out there trying to make it happen, right? And what it is government that we can do, besides getting out of the way, to allow you guys the economic ability to make a living for yourself and your employees. And just anything you wanted to follow up with, would be great. And we'll close out this segment. And, I just can't thank you enough for what you're doing. And I know your employees love you to death. And can't believe you're a restaurateur after being a corporate finance guy. But you've done a great job, and you're still swinging.
Well, I like to refer to myself as semi-retired, but we all know if you're in the restaurant industry, that's a joke. But, more than anything, Bryce, I just want to thank you. I mean, you've been a tremendous supporter of the industry. You've been a tremendous supporter of both the Franklin Inn and the Stables, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And for me personally, to have the ability to consider you a friend and to be able to bounce policy ideas and policy questions and give you my insights, it's the first time in my life I've ever actually felt like I had some sort of level of influence on the process. And I've really appreciated that, both personally and professionally.
Well, thank you, Steve. And it's nice that you're throwing accolades my way. But the truth is that's what representative democracy is all about, right? It's about listening to the people to which you work with and you serve with and worship with and do all these things with, because we're there for you, and that's the job of government. I think many of my colleagues have forgotten that fact, that there's times you and I don't agree, right? And we can kind of talk that out over a slow pour of bourbon, but we can find agreement probably on 80% of what we do, and that's the 80% that we've tried to work on. But again, thank you so much for what you're doing. We're going to run to another break, but Steve, if somebody wants to come and order food from the Stables or the Franklin Inn, they can just go to the website, find it, and click on. Is that right?
Well, they can go to the website, and there's our phone number, and we are accepting takeout orders by phone only at both restaurants, but certainly available that way. You can also find there's a call button on our Facebook page, and you can also get all our contact information off Open Table.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Again, if you want a great meal, go see my good friends at the Stables or the Franklin Inn. I just want to say hi to all the carnival workers there. And, Steve, thank you for what you're doing.